So we want to consider the area and the perimeter of a parallelogram. First thing we need to ask ourselves is, what is a parallelogram? Okay, so we need to know what a parallelogram is before we can find the area and perimeter of the parallelogram. So a parallelogram is a four-sided flat shape or four-sided 2D shape whose opposite sides are parallel and equal in length. Okay. So a parallelogram is a four-sided 2D shape whose opposite sides are parallel and equal in length. So a parallelogram is closely related to a rectangle. So let's draw a parallelogram. Okay. So these two sides are parallel to each other, so we're going to represent it this way. So when you see this sign, you know that these two sides are parallel to each other. Also, these two sides are parallel to each other. So if you look at the drawing, you can also see visually that these two sides are equal. These two sides are equal. So it looks like a rectangle. The only difference is the angle. For this, it is slanting, right? It is leaning towards the right for this particular shape. If you have a rectangle, if you compare a rectangle to a parallelogram, they look similar. The only difference is, for the parallelogram, it is leaning to one side, but for a rectangle, it is upright, right? So that's just the difference between a parallelogram and a rectangle. But just like in the case of a rectangle, the opposite sides are equal. For a rectangle, these two opposite sides are equal. For a parallelogram, the opposite sides are equal. Okay. So now let's look at more features of the parallelogram. So this longer side, we call it the base. And then we can see that this side is slanting, right? So there are two heights for a parallelogram. A parallelogram has two heights. It has the vertical height. A parallelogram has the vertical height, h, and the slant height, a. So two heights, the vertical height and the slant height. So when you are solving for the area and the perimeter, you should be careful which of the heights you are using. If you use the wrong height, you'll get the wrong answer. Okay, so the vertical height is the one that is at 90 degrees to the horizontal, and then you have the slant height. So let's look at the formula for the area of a parallelogram. Okay. Is equal to, the area of a parallelogram is equal to B multiplied by H. B multiplied by H, where B is equal to the base and H is equal to the vertical height. So whenever you are told to calculate the area of a parallelogram, the formula is B multiplied by H. B is the base and H is the vertical height. But on the other hand, the perimeter, the formula for the perimeter is equal to 2A plus B. So the formula for perimeter is 2A plus B. So remember, perimeter is the sum of all the sides surrounding the 2D shape. So if you want to find the perimeter of this parallelogram, all you need to do is add the base, 2 of the base, and 2 of the slant height. Remember, this side is the slant height. So A here is equal to slant height. Okay, so the perimeter of the parallelogram is 2 multiplied by the slant height plus the base. because for you to get the perimeter, you need to add all the sides. So since this side is equal to this side, and this side is equal to this side, so the formula is 2 multiplied by their sum. Okay. So now we're going to look at some examples. Let's look at some examples. So here we are told to calculate the area and the perimeter of this parallelogram here. So first, let's calculate the area. Area, the formula for the area of a parallelogram is the base multiplied by the height. The base multiplied by the height. So our base is equal to 9 feet. The height is equal to, if you use this, you're wrong, okay? Because this is not the height we are looking at. Our h is the vertical height, okay? So we are using 5 feet. 5 feet. Okay, so now let's fix them in. So we have 9 multiplied by 5, and that gives us 45 square feet. So that is the area of the parallelogram. So in the case of the area, we use the vertical height. Okay. Use the slant height. If we had used the slant height, our answer would have been 54, which would have been wrong, right? So you use the vertical height for the area, and then let's try out the perimeter. So calculating the perimeter for this same shape, perimeter is equal to 2a plus b. That's the formula, 2a plus b. So what is our a? Our a is the slant height. So for the perimeter, we are using the slant height. For the area, we use the vertical height. So a is equal to 6 feet. B is still 9 feet. So this gives us 2 brackets 6 plus 9, which is 2 times 6 plus 9 is 15. So the perimeter is equal to 30 feet. So we can see that if we are calculating the perimeter and we decide to use the vertical height, we'll get the wrong answer. So what we have learned is when calculating the area and the perimeter of a parallelogram, we use the vertical height when calculating the area. We use the slant height when calculating the perimeter. Let's try out another simple example. Okay, so in this simple question, we are told to calculate the height of the parallelogram when the area is 65 centimeters square and the base is 13 centimeters. So this is another simple question that we can solve on area of parallelogram. So we know that the area is equal to the base multiplied by the height. So that's the formula. So in this particular question, we are given the area to be 65. So area is equal to 65 centimeters square, and the base is equal to 13 centimeters. So all we need to do is fix in the values and find the height. So 65 is equal to 13 multiplied by h. 65 is equal to 13 multiplied by h. So to get the value of h, we divide both sides by 13. 13 will cancel out 13 here. H is equal to, what's 65 divided by 13? The height of this parallelogram is 5 centimeters. Okay, so it's very easy. So we have seen how to calculate area and perimeter of a parallelogram. So let's look at area and perimeter of a trapezium. Area and perimeter of a trapezium.